having the opportunity to talk with and be on a couple of great news outlets. So I'm going to just read his brief bio here and then let him take it away. So Leo has been on the front lines of the fight against social injustice, harassment, and police brutality for over 20 years. Anchored by his proven abilities as a winning trial lawyer, Terrell's law practice became one of the most trusted firms devoted to the eradication of discrimination in Los Angeles. As a grassroots community leader, he's also worked tirelessly to build better relations between police officers, business owners, and common citizens. A respected negotiator, he's served as the attorney for NAACP, the former chairman of Black Korean Alliance, an advisory board member for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and a former member of California's statewide commission against hate crimes. As a result of his law practice and civic contributions, Leo gained notoriety as an activist, whistleblower, and problem solver. With a well-earned reputation of keeping them honest, Terrell has regularly appeared on national programs such as Nightline, The Today Show, Good Morning America, The O'Reilly Factor, Hannity, and The Larry King Show. He's also hosted his own radio talk show where he discussed and debated hot-button issues regarding social and legal. Prior to his legal career, he taught high school history, geography, and economics, which I think we can all agree our current education system needs more of. He received his master's degree in education from Pepperdine and his law degree from UCLA. So we are very excited to have Leo here with us tonight, and I will let you.
I want to thank you for that great introduction. I think I wrote it. I don't know, but it was fantastic.
Yeah.
And thank you, all of you, Ariana, and all of you for inviting me to this Young Republican meeting tonight. And I'm very happy and proud to be here. I was fortunate. I didn't have to do the Hannity show tonight. I did his radio show, so I got here on time, and it worked out well. Being a former school teacher and lawyer, I know it's important to keep the attention of the audience. And what I like to do is spend about 10 or 15 minutes just talking about where I'm at politically, what I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 weeks, which has gotten a lot of national attention, and then take any questions you may have. So here we go. I have been characterized as an individual who have leaned left on issues, but to me, I always look at issue by issue, and I really don't describe myself as being in a particular party, but I've been characterized as leaning left. And in the last 5 or 6 weeks, there's been a major change in this country. We are going through a pandemic. We just had protesting and rioting on the streets, and we still are going through these changes, and we have a national election this upcoming year in November. And there was a statement made by Democratic candidate Joe Biden that really got me upset and made me realize and re-examine where I stood in the political spectrum. And when he came out, I think he was on a radio show, he came out with a comment saying, if you vote Republican, you ain't Black. That comment insulted me. I'm a civil rights attorney. I believe everybody's equal. Everybody should be treated the same. And to make that statement on a national radio show made several false assumptions about Black Americans voting Democrat and thinking in one voice and one mindset. And I never thought that way. You couple that statement with the ongoing outcry by certain organizations, what I call left extremist organizations, regarding defunding the police, which to me is ludicrous, which is crazy. And I was looking for some type of response from the Democratic side. I didn't hear anything. And it bothered me for a lot of reasons. One, yes, there's racism out there. But 97, 98% of police officers are great. They protect us at 2 and 3 in the morning. 2 or 3% may be rotten. I have a sister in law enforcement. So that statement just drove me nuts. Coupled with the other statement that there were people who were protesting, and all this, again, transpired out of the horrible murder of George Floyd. But there was people out there who were rioting, committing crimes, and using the pretext of protesting. And that was it. I said, look, I was doing local Fox 11 coverage. And I said, there are people out there who are committing crimes. And let's look for some Democratic leadership, because the Democrats control LA, Chicago, Atlanta, Baltimore, and they were not speaking out. In fact, they basically adopted the language of the, in my opinion, the extreme group. And when I'm talking about extreme group, I'm talking about Black Lives Matter, an organization that claims it concerns about every African American in this country. Every life, Black Lives Matter. But there was total silence when an African American police captain retired, David Dorn in St. Louis, who was murdered. A federal agent, African American in this state, murdered. So I realized that there was no leadership in the Democratic Party, that there was pandering to the left, to the extreme left, and I was without a party or any association. So for the last 4 or 5 weeks, I've been on the warpath. I've been on Hannity, national TV shows, radio shows, telling the nation exactly what I'm telling you. That I think it's wrong for a party to be so, excuse my language, hell-bent on defeating Donald Trump and just resting on that argument and having no policies or procedures or platforms or issues for someone to say, yeah, that's why I'm voting Democrat. There's nothing. The Democrats stand for nothing right now, except we want to defeat Donald Trump. And, you know, as a lawyer, you have to deal with facts. And you look at the candidate, Joe Biden, and I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden. I'm out. I mean, today I tweeted that if the election was held today, I vote for Donald Trump, period. And I have credibility on the left because that's where I've been on police misconduct, issues of this sort. Joe Biden has a record regarding discrimination and working on policy of equality. That's an embarrassment. What Donald Trump has done the last 3 years for Black Americans, funding historical Black colleges, the First Step Act, giving people in prison a chance to reform, which basically reversed what Biden did in '94 with the Crime Bill Act. His executive order that he signed last week that dealt with the issue of police reform. He combined police reform with making sure officers were also protected. Police reform with law and order. The Democrats wouldn't work with him. Tim Scott, a great senator, put a bill in the Senate. No Democratic support. Why? Because you have a big R on your name. If you have an R on your name, you can't be in favor of police reform. So basically, the Democratic Party of JFK is gone. And so right now I'm a man on an island. And to be very, very honest with you, the Republican policies that are being encouraged, equality, but no preferential treatment, school choice, charter schools, that to me is the new civil rights issue. I have a large national platform. And what you're hearing from me tonight is what I've been saying for the last 5 weeks. The Democratic leadership is just in total chaos. You had a mayor in Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, who went on, held a press conference and stated, I'm not going to call in the National Guard because I don't want to repeat 1992. He said that. So he'll let the city burn because he doesn't want to call the National Guard. 3 hours later, he calls in the National Guard. Hypocrisy. He slashes the police budget. But the LA City Council president has 24/7 police protection. Hypocrites. Hypocrisy. And this term that has been used over and over again. Let me, as a lawyer, I know this area. This is my wheelhouse. You hear this false term, systemic discrimination. Systemic discrimination. I've been yelling that out in cities like LA, Chicago, Baltimore. How can you have systemic discrimination when people of color are running the system? This is not 1960. This is not Bull Connor, Lester Maddox, the German Shepherds. That doesn't exist. We got people of color working in all areas. Yes, there's discrimination, but it's not systemic in city governments when they're run by people of color. And then the massive, massive elephant in the room. Every weekend in the city of Chicago, crime, shootings, murders that go on and on and on. And where is the Democratic leadership? The president calls for law and order. Law and order in Seattle, Democrats won't do anything. Law and order in Chicago, Democratic leadership won't do anything. It's frustrating. And then you have the pandering. You have the Al Sharptons who will, put his face in front of any camera where there's 4 or 5 or 6 cameras. But when there's no camera, he doesn't show up. That leads me, as I mentioned from the outset, to leave the Democratic Party and just move into an isolated situation. I will support the president unless something catastrophic happens. I'm not supporting Biden. But I think your organization, in my opinion, Young Republicans, when you look at Republican principles, and again, let's face it, the Republicans are not perfect, but your principle, what you're trying to accomplish, equality, opportunity, choice, you can't argue against that. I heard Vernon mention the idea of outreach. Yeah, the churches is the place to go. You're right. You get into there and you start speaking to those organizations. You get people information. Because like I said again, when people yell out stuff, systematic discrimination, they believe it. They don't even know what it is. But if you educate the everyday citizen, then you have now recruited a potential party member. Like I said, you do not, if you saw my response in Twitter, the phone call, people are in tears crying. Oh, I'm so happy you're saying these things. You're speaking from the heart. You're cutting through all the the party rhetoric, the political talk. And just like I'm speaking to you, I can go to bed at night without any guilt, and the criticism that I've recently received from the left doesn't bother me. Been self-employed as a lawyer all my life. It gives me freedom, gives me choice. Good family, mom and dad taught me about the importance of education. I utilized that as a school teacher. Wanted to help a bigger audience. Still got my teaching license. I figure as a lawyer, a law degree can be a great tool or a weapon. I use it as a tool. And so, when Rachel and Ariana asked me to speak to you, it felt like I was back in class. I said, great, I'm going to come here and speak. I love it. I love this because my goal for the remaining part of my life is to get information out there. And your organization has the opportunity to help educate your party a little bit. I spoke to a reverend last night. He called me based on, he saw me on the Mark Levin show, a Reverend James Robeson, big pastor organization in Texas. He almost made me cry because he was speaking to the president about, hey, you got, you care about this country, but you gotta just change certain aspects, the way you present, the way you care. And I almost started crying because this guy was his only concern was helping people. And if you can convince and recruit people that your party is trying to help people make personal decisions, personal choices, individual choices, not depend on the government for everything, because the government can't supply everything. Everyone knows that. But see, the Democrats play this game. The government will do everything for you. Impossible. Impossible. And they need to be challenged on those issues. And, I was on TV. I challenged any mayor in LA, Chicago, Baltimore to talk to me about systemic discrimination. I'll destroy them. It doesn't exist. They have the power to change anything if they wanted to. But that's the type of rhetoric, that's the type of Kool-Aid that you hear on CNN and MSNBC. So what the goal is for your organization, you want to enlarge your group, you want to get more Republicans in your organization, is to give them the facts and challenge the rhetoric, because there's a lot of it out there, and people are going to be voting based on misinformation. And my goal, like I said, and then I want to open up the questions. My goal is to continue beyond the election in November, speaking like I'm speaking to you, telling you like it is. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I don't think so based on what I've talked to you about this evening. But isn't it amazing how the Democrats could be ahead in the polls right now based on all these lies and series of misinformation that's going out over and over again? It's unbelievable. But that's the battle that the Republicans are facing right now. A president has been very effective, but the method of his messaging has been basically manipulated by the very extreme left-wing media. So, that's how I feel. That's what I believe. That's why you probably invited me on. I've been speaking like this for the last 5 or 6 weeks. I'm going to continue to do so. And I appreciate the time. And hey, look, you want questions? Let's talk. And I'm open for any questions you may have about where I stand and why I'm doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo, so much. We really, really appreciate it. So the way we'll handle questions, if you guys have something you want to ask Leo, definitely feel free to unmute yourselves and ask, and then we'll go ahead and kind of filter that way. If it gets a little bombarding, I'll kind of monitor, but we're all adults here. We should be able to handle this. Go ahead, Eric.
Mr. Terrell, thank you so much for taking the time out. My question for you is, do you think that the president should send the military or even the National Guard into Chicago and just take control?
That's a very good question, because the Democrats are baiting him to do that. They could look the situation in Seattle, Chicago, those mayors can handle this if they wanted to. Like I said about Eric Garcetti, I'm not going to call him the National Guard. To answer your question directly, no, I don't think so, because I think it's a trap. I think it's a trap for the president. If he does so, he would get blowback from the Democrats. You have to understand the Democrats' whole strategy between now and November. If the president say hot, say cold. If he says yes, say no. They're not going to work together at all. So he'll be falling into a trap. The best example I can give you is, again, Tim Scott had a justice reform bill. The Democrats wouldn't even let it go for debate. You know why? Because they don't want the Republicans to have any credit for police reform. You see, the Democrats have portrayed the Republicans as, oh, they're always pro-police. Tim Scott is an honorable man, but to answer your question directly, no, Mr. President, don't do it. It's a trap.
If I may,
go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Terrell, for being here.
My pleasure.
I've been watching you on Hannity for a long time, and what strange times we're in, because I remember watching you and thinking, I can't believe what he's saying. I completely disagree. And then in these last couple of months or so, thinking, what's changed? What's different? And you mentioned you're on the war path. I think many of us are young and looking at some of the older Republicans in our party and wondering what we can do to support them or help them. On this war path of yours, instead of just targeting everybody, if you had to pick certain groups or certain things to focus on, what would you do? Are you looking at Democrats, trying to get them to change? Are you looking at the GOP and trying to give them a backbone? What would be the most successful route?
That's a very good question. Let me address one aspect. I haven't changed. It may seem like I've changed, because look, isn't it odd that I'm saying I'm opposed to defunding the police? Okay, is that a Democratic issue? Is that a Republican issue? I mean, you saw it, I saw it. People were looting, burning. They should go to jail. Is that a Democratic issue or a Republican issue? But when I said that, oh my gosh, he's changed. Are you kidding me? I got a sister in law enforcement. Right now, to go back to your question, I like answering questions instead of, you said about what's my strategy. My strategy right now is to peel off Democrats, to wake them up right now. That's my short-term goal, to wake up Democrats between now and November. And I'm getting a lot of response, because see, there are a lot of people who support Donald Trump. That's why he beat Hillary. Hillary was unlikable. And people made that final decision in the ballot box to vote for Trump over Hillary. But she still won over more popular votes. My goal is to educate Democrats right now to make sure they understand that they're being sold a bag of fool's gold. The long range plan is this. I realize that the Democrats are not going to change their rhetoric. You know, they still think it's 1960. We need affirmative action. We need all these, remedies to give preferential treatment instead of equal treatment. To your question about the Republicans, there are some old guard Republicans. I go back to the Reverend who I spoke to. And again, if you look at the Republicans' basic principle, equality, personal choice, freedom, liberties, there's a corporate structure of the Republican Party that prevents those things from being focused on. And there needs to be a wedge. That's why Trump was, in a way, sort of a populist Republican, in a sense. But I think there are some old guard Republicans that need to be dislodged or become more of a minority within the Republican Party, because your basic principles of choice, liberty, freedom, self-determination, strong national defense, those are winners. But the messaging is wrong. But my focus now is on the Democrats. What happens after November as far as Leo Terrell, what I'm going to do, I don't know. But that's how I see it right now.
Well, thank you. If there's anything I or anyone else can do to help you, please let us know.
Definitely. Thank you very much. You guys can always follow me on Twitter. I think Ariana's can give you all my information, but let's stay in contact. Whenever I speak to groups and individuals, I always want to stay in contact. My schedule's been tremendously hectic right now, but I really to talk, hear other points of view, and that's what it's all about: exchanging ideas in a forum of discussion, not yelling and screaming at each other.
Jennifer, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess so. Thank you so much for coming out and speaking with us. Do you, are there areas where you do still lean left, and where are those areas, and what would you want to tell us about in terms of those things?
That's a very good question, because Jennifer, it goes back to the previous question that was asked. I've changed. Have I changed? I believe in police reform. I believe that I've always felt that 97% of police officers are great. I think the misunderstanding or the perception of Republicans is that they don't spend enough energy on equality, on the issue of equality, and they're perceived as being ignorant or unaware that there are people being treated unfairly. I want to be clear. There is no institutionalized racism in this country any longer, okay? There is issues of individuals discriminating, maybe a few people discriminating, but government now has changed and evolved. Back to your question. I think the focus that Republicans need to be aware of more is focus on the issue of equality and how you message that. Because, if you saw, you read my background, heard about my background, I believe I'm a civil rights attorney, which basically says, I believe everyone should be treated equally. I do not believe that people should be given preferential choice. For example, Leo Terrell will be fighting against that affirmative action bill in 2009. That's going to be up on the ballot. That's a horrible bill. It says that we need to give certain groups of people preferential treatment. It violates the 14th Amendment. And this is, again, not 1960. I would probably be in favor of it if it was 1960. But this is 2020. And look at the diversity we have in this group. So I'll be fighting against that. But the messaging by the Republicans has been substandard, poor on that issue. And again, Tim Scott, I think, is retiring, the senator from South Carolina. Great man. I hope he stays involved because he gets the message across of equality without showing any preference to one side or another. That's where I lean left a little bit more been something that the Republicans should be aware of. That equality, but not preferential.
Thank you.
Sarah, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you so much. So this is like my first meeting, and I honestly didn't know that there is any one single Republican in this state. So this is a very super exciting for me. This is like a support group, may I say. So my question is that I grew up in Yugoslavia, and most of you can remember what kind of war was that, and this is all look alike to me. And I just truly believe that I have two questions for you. First question is that this is a very planned strategy how to actually divide people. And I think the problem is basically that what they do to Yugoslavia, they're actually doing it right now. It was like a test over there. We're going to do in America. And I think that I've been here for 5 years and I really enjoy my freedoms because I have to do whatever I want. I don't have a problem with anyone. And the problem I have here is education. It's like I'm currently enrolled in Santa Monica College, and how professors are sending their message. Like for example, my professor yesterday mentioned Trump for 3 times, and I'm talking about infinitives and gerunds. Like, what has to do with that? I don't understand. But it's for me, it's really stupid. You know, I don't care. You know what I mean? I'm here to learn. You know what I mean? So my question is like, what do we do to fix education? I mean, this is all eventually gonna ruin by itself, because let's be honest, even Roman Empire didn't last forever. So they're gonna get a big slap in November, hopefully. So what we're gonna do? How are we gonna fix education? Because education is a really serious crisis. Basically, teachers are telling you to be a victim of your life. That's a very loser mentality. Like even in socialist countries, they don't do that. I'm sorry, but they never taught me to be a loser, a victim. And my second question is that, does the government has a right to fund the Planned Parenthood? Do you think that should be funded by taxpayer, or there should be like a better way to approach that problem? Thank you so much. I hope I didn't talk too long.
No. Let me tell you right now, and education to me is the new civil rights issue. Okay, education, school choice. Education is power. Let's be clear. I'm here right now because of my education, the master's degree, the law degree. That's the new civil rights issue. And the Democrats right now have basically stifled education in areas of color. They have stifled it. Why? They're in bed with the unions. They deny charter schools or choice. They're focused on keeping, in my opinion, the standards of education down. I think that is a major, major problem. And I think if the Republicans would deal and focus on the issue of civil rights as an education issue, choice, that's a winner. Because trust me, in a lot of these communities, people are starving. They want their kids to learn. They want their kids to get out of the area and grow. And the only ticket you have to get a guaranteed ticket is getting an education. High school, college, graduate school, that is key. Now, let me go back to your point about the messaging. I want to be clear. This is very important. And you have the same tools that other individuals have, and I'm referring to Black Lives. Black Lives Matter has dominated the nation with their message by using social media right now. They're in charge. Corporations are giving them millions of dollars. Everyone, they have dominated the messaging right now, and that's why the Democratic Party is in their back pocket. Listen, the whole end game for Black Lives Matter, they always want to be an outside fringe group. Garcetti and every mayor can defund the police, and they will never please them. And have you ever asked yourself about Black Lives Matter? I've asked myself, are any of them, do they vote? Do they run for office? They're agitators. But right now, Black Lives Matter has dominated the messaging across the country. You have that power, you have that same power. They have been able to organize using social media. I give them full credit for that, but they don't represent this country at all. Now, Let me go back to the other question.
Just to ask you something. I mean, how are you going to spread a message when you conservatives and Republicans has been banned like on the platforms? Like, look at the Facebook right now. They're just making a policy that basically the free speech has to be like on that platform, and the companies are pulling out the money. And you have a Twitter that, I mean, you like literally like censoring the president of the United States. It seems like that everybody is against the Trump in a way that we're basically in war. This is not about left and right. This is about tyranny against freedom.
I would let me mention this to you. I'd respectfully disagree. We'll have a little question here. What man in this country has dominated social media for the last 4 years?
Donald J. Trump.
You better believe it. And what method has he used to dominate the media's attention every morning at 4 or 5 in the morning? He's used Twitter. Notwithstanding the issues that you've raised, Donald Trump has revolutionized getting messages out. From this point forward, the presidency, the model of the presidency has changed. Donald Trump has controlled the media with Twitter. Twitter.
Yes.
So I understand there's censorship and all that, but I go back to my basic principle. Black Lives Matter has gained a major foothold because they control social media. Young Republicans, Twitter's available for you.
Not really.
It's available. And you have to control the messaging. Let me go back to that last question you asked about Planned Parenthood. I don't think government funding, I'm really conservative on government spending. I think it should be limited to issues of national security, issues of protecting the health, safety, and moral. I think Planned Parenthood is a choice issue. It's an individual choice issue. And if Planned Parenthood is going to be funded, it can be funded by organizations other than the national government. And there are people who support Planned Parenthood, great. But should government be involved in that? No. And I think you had Joe Biden, who took that position, especially on the issue of abortion for the last 40 years, until he decided that the left side have said, no. If you want the nomination, you got to agree to this. And he flip-flopped. And that's strictly a political decision he made. But my personal choice is should be privately funded, because in this country, again, people have the right to make personal decisions.
Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed
My pleasure.
this with you.
My pleasure. Good questions.
Does anybody else have any questions for Leo?
Yeah, I do. Hey, Ariana, can you hear me?
You're
Hey,
good.
Leo. Yeah, sorry, my video isn't working. I apologize. Hey, Leo, so thanks for the talk. So right now, it seems like a lot of GOP congressmen are too afraid to criticize BLM and to kind of fight back against the narrative, mainly because I think they're scared of being called racist.
You're right.
And in today's America, being called racist is probably the worst thing you can be labeled as. And so my question is, how do we counter BLM's narrative on systemic racism and police violence without coming across as racially insensitive to Black Americans? Like how do you, because that's a really hard balance, especially if you're a white Republican. And so how do you strike that balance? What's your right messaging for them to use in this election?
That's a great question. I have a very easy answer. You have to be Black. Isn't that amazing? I can criticize. Let's be honest. I've criticized Black Lives Matter on national TV. You know why? Because I'm Black. You're 100% correct. If you were to say the same things that I'm saying, this is why this country is so race conscious. And this is why you're absolutely correct. If you were to say the same things that I'm saying on national TV, if you're not Black, you would be called a racist. Isn't that amazing? And Tim Scott, again, I go back to Tim Scott. Even the Democrats know they have a problem with him because he's making a lot of sense. And yet Dick Durbin called him he was making reference to him by using the term token legislation. That word token, that's a buzzword. A white Chicago, Illinois senator using that reference on Tim Scott. And again, look at look at Joe Biden. Association with Robert Byrd. Calling President Obama, he's a clean, articulate Negro or, Black, all these racist comments, because they got a big D in their name, a D. You got a D on your name, you get a pass. You vote Republican, you ain't Black. my God, if a Republican said that in reverse, he's gone. That big D. So you got to have a D on your name. You have to have a D on your party affiliation. You have to be black. But you're right. You can't get away saying what I'm saying. And they can't attack me because I got 25 years of credibility, 25 years on this side. But the issue here is this. Your strategy is you got to take the race argument out of it. For example, school choice. These race issues are the colorblind issues, and I think But to answer your question directly, I don't think if you're white right now, given the Black Lives, again, ability to control the social media, I don't think a white person can get away with saying what I'm saying, and that's really ridiculous. That's totally ridiculous, but it's reality right now.
I have a question for Leo.
All right. Yeah. So we're going to go Spencer and then Michael, and then we'll see where we are on time. Okay.
Nice. Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. So Leo, I'm black. And my question is that I'm the only Republican in my family. And usually what happens a lot of times is that when I go and, we talk, they agree with me on like socially, conservative things like, LGBT, school choice, all this kind of stuff. But then when it comes to the hey, okay, you got Republican or conservative principles and conservative values, but now it's just something about when they see the D and they see the R, it's like Republicans are racist, so I got to vote for D. It's just an automatic thing. How do you break that cycle? How do you break that string mentality right there that just says, yeah, I agree with them, all this other stuff, but Republicans are just for rich white people and not for me?
And that's exactly what we've been saying throughout this program. Throughout this, it's education. You got magical buzzwords like systematic discrimination, institutionalized discrimination, and no one's called on that. And then, of course, in Black communities, let's face it, you're fighting values that have been established, since Franklin Roosevelt, where Blacks vote Democrat, especially in the 60s. And you have the historic passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act during a Democratic administration in Johnson, even though it depended on Republicans to get that bill passed. Republicans helped get the Civil Rights Act passed. But the point here is you're fighting against history and the perception that the Democratic Party is a party of equality. The only way you're going to neutralize that, you're going to have honest, frank discussion. I have no problem going to a Black church now and speaking and articulating exactly what I'm telling you right now. It's the recruitment process that your recruiter was talking about. You got to educate. You got to challenge these people. For example, think about this. If I was debating Eric Garcetti right now, he used that term, systematic discrimination. I said, hey, show me what you've done the last 3 or 4 years on eliminating systematic discrimination. You've been the mayor. You have the power to fire people. Show me the paperwork. You're only talking this way right now because you're being attacked by the left. You can change every policy. Show me your hiring practices. But see, that is a type of discussion that you never hear. You just hear buzzwords, and then all of a sudden people just drink that Kool-Aid and they accept it. So you really have to have a discussion of the facts and call these people out. One final point. On Hannity, I said, quote, I will pay any mayor from LA, Chicago, Baltimore, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C. to debate me on systemic discrimination. I haven't got any challenges yet. Seriously, I said that on that. I would pay. I want to debate them on that issue. They will lose.
Trust me, even the 5-year-old can beat easily Garcetti.
Probably. Garcetti just panders. Eric Garcetti is a pander, and I just honestly, every night when he does these ridiculous milquetoast press conferences, like he really cares. Look at the homeless situation out there; it's horrible, and he's looking to deflect from the disastrous 8 years he served as mayor. He's horrible.
Hey, Mr. Terrell, I have one more quick question. What is the difference?
Yes.
What is the difference? Do you see the main difference between the right and the left? Are these two sides? What's the like? Is there some core principle there?
Well, you know, it's funny. Both the right and left are really corporations. They both got them on both sides. There's corporate Democrats and there's corporate Republicans. And I think those two entities, corporations, become an obstacle to really put forth Republican principles. When we talk about choice, liberty, those things don't have a monetary value to it, but there's an economic impact on both parties. First thing every Republican administration calls for, what do? Tax cuts. What do the Democrat do presidents when they come in? Tax hikes. They control all the things we're talking about, choice and all those things. That's never on the agenda. That's not the first item. Both parties are beholden to corporations. And the Republican principles of choice, liberties, freedom, it's pushed to the side.
So are there any Democrat? What are the Democrat principles though? Because when I talk to them, it's kind of hard. Okay.
Well, you know, again, if you're asking me what are the Democratic principles right now, I don't know what they are. I mean, what is the platform for the Democratic Party right now? Anything but Trump? Anyone but Trump?
It's more like a brainwash. It's more like a brainwash and role.
Anyone but Trump, and right now that's winning in the polls. I don't think it's going to hold up. I think Biden is going to be in trouble during the debates because he's going to articulate a platform. But right now, that's working, unfortunately.
All right, so we're going to finish up with our last two questions. I know Michael has one, and then Vernon will cap it off there. And following that, we'll connect you guys with Leo and all that. So, Michael, if you want to go ahead and ask your question.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, Leo, I want to thank you for coming to this small, intimate group when regularly we see you in front of 3 to 5 million people on Fox and Hannity. And I'm certainly going to do my best, and I hope everybody else does, to help your Twitter page at the Leo Terrell, I know that we've got a lot of savvy social media people here. You know, there was a saying that 1 is a tragedy and 100 is a statistic. And I want to correlate that to the George Floyd murder, which is a tragedy, but there's statistically 30, 50, 75 black on black murders, homicides across this nation every week. But we never hear about that on CNN or MSNBC. Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, look, the problem is this: the George Floyd murder has been hijacked by the left. Okay, they're using it for everything now. They're using it to justify tearing down monuments. They're using it to destroy this country. It's being used by the left. Black on black crime does not get national attention from the left perspective. And the media, let's be clear, the George Floyd situation is was a problem, a horrible incident, but it does not support institutionalized racism. And the media loved it. And that's why it's been hijacked by the Black Lives Movement. I'm gonna get to your point about Chicago in a second. The media loved the George Floyd situation so much, they tried to create another one in Atlanta, the Rayshard Brooks case. That wasn't the same. The situation in Atlanta, the black man being shot, that was not the same situation as George Floyd. And I spoke about that. Black on black crime in Chicago is not profitable to the media. It's not profitable to Al Sharpton. It's not profitable to the Democrats. The George Floyd situation gives you that old 1960 white cop, black victim. That's a 1960 version, and they eat that up. That's why right now, the Democrats and the left are enjoying that. The black on black crime issue doesn't sell for the Democrats. It's a law and order issue that the Republicans have adopted and accepted, but the Democrats won't respond. That's why you hear Trump calling for law and order. Democrats are sitting on their hands. Doesn't sell for them. Isn't that amazing? I think I forgot the caller who said, I've changed. Who is opposed to law and order? What Democrat, what Republican, what independent is opposed to law and order? I yell out law and order, oh, Leo's changed. No, I just haven't lost my bearing. The Democratic Party is so far left, it's gone.
Leo, I think I'm going to ask you a question, and this will be the last one. And you can, answer as much of it as you will. I just comment. I know someone here have asked about why there isn't a highlight on black and black crime and things like that. And there's also the call to education. And so I know people like yourself, for instance, who've been talking about equality for a long time. Larry Elder, who's been a voice on the right for some time, and then more recently, someone like Candace Owens, who's in some ways polarizing for the right and left, who've been very vocal about some things. And I've heard something said in black communities that those on the right just focus on black on black crime. There's so much focus on what's wrong with the black community, and there's no discussion from right or left about what's the way forward. How do we actually make things better? And then not only that, I also hear sometimes on multiple fronts that there's kind of I don't want to say an ignorance, but there's just an underappreciation of some of the cultural gap between broader America and Black America. And so how do you bridge that gap, not just by talking about equality, but in a real way? And then what's the way forward, if there was one, for the next generation of young Black leaders? What would that be?
That is a very, very good question. That's a powerful question, and I want to answer that to the best of my ability. I won't have all the answers. That's a great question, because there's a perception that Black conservatives have disassociated themselves with the Black community, and they just talk about the problems and they don't come up with solutions. And you mentioned three people, and I know two that I want to talk about: Candace Owens and Larry Elder. That's a very good question. Again, I come from the left, and yet people see me now as a conservative. I'm not a conservative. I call myself fair-minded. But let's talk about Candace Owens and Larry. And I think they hurt a person like yourself, or even me, if I was going to, let's say, adopt the Republican stripes. Because Candace, and I'll look at Candace first. This is just my opinion. Candace always looks at the ultimate negative within the Black community without any positive solution. And Blacks are hearing, my gosh, she's so negative. Okay, negative, without giving a positive solution. That's my opinion of Candace. She points out issues, but they're characterized in such a harsh manner. And I think Larry, who I've known, worked at the same stations, been on Hannity, Larry has that same issue, but to a lesser extent. Someone said this, and I read this. Kara Davis is a Black conservative. She writes for Red State. She wrote a great article about why Candace Owens is wrong. And she said, I think it was a quote in that article that said, Blacks want to hear from a Black conservative, not from a Black who espoused white conservatism. And I think the issue for me, if I was going to a Black community and say, look, we got to get rid of the public school system, or give it the opportunity to have choice. We have charter schools here. And here's how we do it. You got to show compassion. They got to know that you really care. This is what we're going to do. You're going to have to change people's minds by changing their hearts. I think when Larry and Candace speak, there's no effort to change people's heart, because, there's been a history in the Black community, vote Democrat, 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 Democrat. So you got to change people's minds and hearts. And I guarantee you, I got a lot of credibility. I got a lot of credibility because I've handled major police cases involving, it's tough. It's going to be tough because minds and change their hearts. And I think the part of changing the hearts is where Larry and Candace fall way short of. A lot more to be discussed. So that's a great question, but there's a strategy, and you were talking about recruitment, and if you're going to do that recruitment, it's a twofold issue, and I don't have the cure or the answer. How do you change someone's heart? That's tough, but the great question.
Thank you. I don't know if you have time. There was a second part too. If we don't have time to get to it, that's okay.
Yeah, no, we can go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and follow up.
Yeah, the second part, it was just like, and again, I'm trying to do it in the least or the most sensitive way to just talk about.
The key here, if we're going to have a true discussion, say it in the most blunt, direct way. That's the way. See, it's the political rhetoric. The fog is what confuses people. You will do a disservice by not being direct. You've got to be direct.
So here's the direct version. There's like, growing up as a young African American, there are things you're told about yourself, about society, about others that most other Americans aren't told by themselves or anyone else. You've probably lived through some of them, maybe even in some of your time shared some of those views and sentiments or experiences. There's just a view that you're taught about America and your place in America that other Americans don't necessarily get. And so at the same time, that creates, in my view, a cultural gap between the appreciation for the blessing of being an American and what it truly means, that I don't feel like a lot of non-Blacks truly understand or appreciate from a Black perspective. And I want to know how, not just for me, but how others in this group can come to appreciate. It's not that there's not that we just need to focus on equality and school choice, and those are great things, but we have to be able to do, I think, more of what you said about changing hearts in order to change minds. But that means you have to understand someone if you want to actually reach them. And so I want to help others in this group actually understand how they can reach people that aren't there. It's not just about saying, Constitution, Declaration of Independence, Civil Rights Act, we're done. There's more to it than that. And I want to make sure that there's at least some discussion about how to actually acknowledge that we're raised differently sometimes. And it's not about whether or not you believe in systematic racism or not. It's just the stories you're told about our history and your opportunities here are different. And so how do you bridge that gap?
Hey, you know what? If I'm going to sit here, and thank you for the direct question, because I'm going to give you a direct answer. I don't know the answer to that question because it's impossible. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you I can tell you the factors that are in play that makes it such difficult for us to come up with an answer to that question. The most segregated part of living in this country is church and place of living, residential. It's built in. Separation of races and color and religion and sex has been a problem since the beginning of mankind, even in the most free society. But our most segregated time of life is at home and at churches, on the weekend and every night when we go home. And our experience as African Americans, Black Americans, white Americans, is all based on how we're raised. They always talk about, well, things could be better when this old generation, anyone born before 1960, die off. I don't think so. I just don't think so. It's going to always be here. It's going to always be a problem. And economic equality, whatever that might be, all the things we're talking about, school choice, it ain't happening. Because what goes on behind closed doors at people's home is private. And, when you're from the day you're born up until the time you leave that house, you're influenced. The most dominant influence, what goes on at home and what goes on at church. And that is just part of the equation. And for someone to, the question was so direct, I'm giving you a direct answer. I don't have an answer for that. It's going to have to just be a continuation of working. Is it going to be one great leader who's going to break through all this? No. Because, like I said again, with 340 plus million people in this country, they all live differently. Even the people who praise me when they send me emails, you should read some of those emails and tweet. the motivation for why they're praising me, I'm saying, wow, that's weird. They get to the same point, but from a different direction. It's their perception. And everyone on this call has a different way or perception based on how we were raised from day one until how we got here tonight. I do not have an answer for that. It's just something that is part of just mankind. It's been around. Don't have an answer.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate the question. Great question.
All right. Thank you so much, Leo. I'm just going to ask Eric a question on here. I know Eric said that he's seen you obviously on Hannity debating with Cornel West, and you were phenomenal. But Fox News is obviously kind of speaking to the audience there. Do you get invited to take on anybody or, be a special guest on CNN or MSNBC?
Good question. To answer your question directly, for the last 5 weeks, no. I wonder why. The Cornel West situation was great from the standpoint of two different viewpoints, and the fact that, all these stations, and you point out Fox has an agenda. Look, everything is economically motivated. MSNBC, CNN, they put on commentators that fit their narrative, same as Fox. And the interaction, the debate. If I was to go on CNN or MSNBC right now, it would be a debate and both camps would go back to their same side, changing no one's opinion. The problem here is those shows aren't built for true discussion. The real work is getting out in the community, as Vernon was talking about, getting out there and talking to people. You can't do it in a 2 or 3 minute soundbite. But no, CNN and MSNBC the last 5 or 6 weeks will not debate me. I'm hoping that I'm baiting them, or they would go put me on their show, because I want to debate those individuals. But right now, no.
All righty. Thank you so much, Leo. We truly appreciate having you on tonight. I will touch base with you tomorrow, and we will get your contact information sent out to everybody here so that they have it. And again, thank you. It's been phenomenal having you on tonight and being able to have this conversation with such a small group. We really, really appreciate it.
I enjoyed it, Ariana. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to sign off. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Good night.
All right, guys. So for those of you, it's been about an hour. If you guys have to hop off, totally understand. But we are more than welcome to stay on a little bit if you guys want to discuss, debrief, Leo. If you guys want to talk about what's going on in LA, or if anybody wants to bring up conversation, we're definitely more than welcome. We have the chat room and we can kind of network and socialize. I do want to call out Sarah and Kevin. They both are new people who reached out.
Has the sheer nerve, the sheer entitled caucasity to say all lives matter. I'm gonna stab you.
That was from Charlie.
And while you're struggling and bleeding out, I'm gonna give you a paper cut and say.
I know that video. That was on Twitter. That was just a crazy Harvard girl.
All right. So back to what I was saying. I wanted to thank Sarah and Kevin. They both reached out to West LAYR, and this is their first event. They're here tonight. Michael as well joined halfway through and messaged West LAYR on Facebook. So for all the new people who this is kind of their first event, thanks for hopping on. And we really appreciate having you guys here. But yeah, other than that, if somebody wants to lead discussion, people want to bring up topics and discuss, we're more than welcome, or we can kind of just make it a social thing, whatever you guys really want to do.
I'll just
hear Grant's pitch.
Back off of that, and so, like, if anyone wants to continue the conversation a little bit and maybe hear from a real life Black person about what they feel about what's going on, I'm happy to field questions to that effect. Many of you kind of hear me in the chat if you're on the chat, but if you want to do that, I'm happy to do that too. Otherwise, feel free to socialize, and if you're new, definitely reach out to me. And we can get you situated.
If I can jump in also, sorry for the technical issues I was having at the beginning. I've since fixed those. By the way, I thought I agree with the questions we asked were phenomenal. I thought we all did a fantastic job, and I love listening to his answers. So thank you all very much for. I think we were a great group and a great audience for him tonight.
May I make one very quick announcement?
Yes.
Okay, tomorrow evening is the meeting of the Beverly Hills Conservative Club. They're going to be doing a lot of it on Zoom. Some people are meeting at Factors Deli. I don't know if they have spots left because of all the social distancing rules. But if you're interested in networking with more like-minded people, Beverly Hills Conservative Club tomorrow night, 7 p.m., Factors Deli and Zoom.
Can you share a link on the West LAYR page?
Yes, I can do that.
Thanks.
Or you can send it to me and I'll pass it along to everybody as well.
I will do that.
Thank you.
I trust Ariana's competence.
Eric, I have a question. Do you have a relative named Steve Golub?
I do not. My family tree is very small.
Oh, very okay. Got you. And a question for Vernon. I've been in sports broadcasting a long time, and I listen a lot, and I've heard a lot of darker skinned African Americans really say some unkind things to lighter skinned African Americans. And there's a perception that the lighter skinned African American is not as good as of an athlete. They have to prove themselves, almost like if a Caucasian were to go to the basketball court, they're like the last man on the bench to be selected. And it's an observation, and most of the time I'm doing observation unless I'm spoken to or have an opportunity to interview. Have you observed or experienced that type of discrimination within the African American community?
Yeah, Michael, thanks for the question. The short answer is yes, definitely. And it's hard for me to like kind of talk about it because I understand like everything that's going on in on multiple dimensions. One, because my dad was raised in the South in the 50s and 60s, so the things that many of us might not even know as part of our history were very real for him. And so the things that people are talking about when Leo Terrell says this was TV in the 60s, like that was my dad's friends and neighbors growing up in Alabama. So that like's real for him. And so some of what I was alluding to the last question is the things that we're told growing up severely impact who we become as adults. And so that's true for everyone. And we all know that, right? That's why parenting is so important. What I'm getting at is really like what we're told in our houses and in our homes and all of that just really shapes the worldview that we approach with other people with. And so many Blacks are told by other Blacks how they are to think and feel and respond and engage with other Blacks in a very, it kind of puts limits on what you can and can't do, think and say, and who you need to be, and so on and so forth. And so to be honest, I was raised in California, and so there's a lot of, or Blacks are a very, very definite minority here. I think we're like 6% of the state, so less so than other parts of the country. And I was also, raised in a very kind of diverse religious community. So I had friends from all different backgrounds, and so it wasn't like I was like, out of the 50 Black kids, I was like kind of the middle grade there. It was like, no, there were like 4 other Black people, and we just hung out if we wanted to. We didn't if we didn't want to. And so I definitely experienced it in a broader sense where you are either assigned your Blackness by the things that you do or think or say. I've never been challenged on the gradient of my personal melanin amount, but I do know that to be a thing. And there are a lot of people who are proud of being very, very, very dark. They see that as being more connected to their African roots or whatever. Spencer, if you want to speak to it too, definitely do that from your personal experience. But I know in mine, one, it's the stories that we're told and then we tell each other about who we are and what we need to be. Severely impacts how we approach the world. And I know it's true for everyone, but I know in the Black community, it's particularly well defined, what you can and can't do, should and shouldn't say. And that's why when Joe Biden says something like, if you don't vote for me, you ain't Black, A lot of black folks are like, yeah, of course, and then Republicans are see is racist, and a lot of blacks are like, no, this is the truth. It's not he's racist. This is the truth.
Yeah.
And so, and that's kind of what I was alluding to as well about the cultural gap between broader America and Black America. There's just not a lot of understanding about some of the nuances of blackness, if you will.
Yep.
And so the more we can talk about those, which is why I'm happy to do it, the more I think conservatives will understand not just why it's hard to bridge the gap, but that there actually is a gap, and it's not just that we don't know who the founders were, or that freedom is good, or that we don't want to be X, Y, or Z. And so I hope that answers your question. There's a little bit more, there's a little bit extra there too, but I'm trying to put context behind it, and so that we understand there's a difference between what happens in the Black community and what happens outside of it. I think you've experienced that directly. I've experienced it, and if Spencer wants to address it, he can as well.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. I'm assuming you can, but the gaps, being black is a blackness is a thing to black people. I know and it's kind of weird because if I take the idea of it and I just switch out the word with whiteness, right? Like if there was a group of people going around and they say white power, right? That'd be a different type of thing, at least in my mind, than a group of people going around and saying black power, because black power has a certain emphasis and stuff to it, and I think it's because of the systematic racism that was in the United States, right, for nearly 400 something years against darker skinned people in this country. And so now there's a lot in the black community where, and this is a lot of this comes from leftist academia that says, oh no, you can't be racist because you can't be racist because in order to be racist you have to be in control of the power structures that exist, and so blacks aren't in control of the power structures that exist. So therefore, if a black person has a discriminatory view based on race, which is the definition of racism, if they have that view, they're not racist. They're just maybe prejudiced, or if that. But you can't use the word but they can't be racist. So in Black America, there's a lot of these various ideas, right? Like reparations, like the fact that black people built this country, aka that kind of idea. When growing up black, a lot of times I was told that, oh Spencer, why are you talking white? and or acting white, or these kinds of things. And it wasn't, I didn't know what acting white was. I mean, I barely knew white people. I just understood that there's a correct way to use grammar and language, and I liked math, I liked school, I liked certain things, but in the black community it was seen as a stigma to like certain things or to appreciate certain stuff. So the black experience for a lot of black Americans is very, I would imagine it to be different, because we do have all these stories about slavery and about Jim Crow and civil rights, and your grandma who got water hosed by the trucks and all that kind of stuff, and it's all of these stories and things like that, and especially the church also, right, where a lot of people hang out and they come together and they talk about issues. But then again, when it's a black politician, that black politician is usually on the Democratic side, so therefore you got to support, not because of the policies or the actual party that the person is in, but you got to support them because they are black. And so I think for a lot of us who are African American and then look at the country, understand that there's sin for people that exist in the world, and then try to separate that out from America, it's really a phenomenal thing almost to be able to break out of that mindset and to and to join another party, whereas other groups, I don't know if they have it, they don't quite have it the same way. I think Jews are perhaps the only other group that I could sort of maybe identify with that, because there's a lot of Jews who are just extremely far left for I don't know what the reasoning is.
I'll be happy to get into that later if you want. But,
yeah. But I think the Jewish experience is probably the closest I could articulate to it to a non-Black person.
I have some thoughts about like that. Just I'm always fascinated about, and maybe it's just the obsession with actual like skin tone, but like there is so much diversity within even the Black community, like that it's not just all African American. It's
colorism.
Like I also don't know like the ratio of like, or the percentages of how many like African American as opposed to like other like cultures within the Black community. But I mean, it just seems like there's this like it misses that complexity that like in the general narrative, it's just like you're either like, and maybe that again is just because of skin tone is really what matters when you look at the issues in the Black community. But it seems like there's such different experiences culturally with each of those different like Creole is different than African American, is different from Nigerian. There's just so much complexity within even the Black community. It just baffles me that that's not there isn't much awareness of that.
Well, I mean, I want to just touch on that real quick and then go to Aaron on it. It's the idea of colorism is an actual thing in the Black community. Light-skinned people, quote unquote, light-skinned people, versus other darker skinned people in the Black community. There's, I'm gonna say it, racism in between those groups much of the time, and it's not talked about because it's just not it doesn't get clicks or whatever the thing is. But when people tells me that there's systematic racism today against Black people, my number one example group is the Nigerians and people from Jamaica and those other types of groups, because when they come over to the United States, they tend to do better than Black people here in the United States. And if there was there's such thing as systematic racism based on the color of your skin, then we should see those two groups. We shouldn't see any difference there, but we do. And it's when and I think it's because of the cultural value system that a lot of African Americans in the United States has. But if you look at other groups that come from Africa and they come over here to America, they do better. And so
I'll comment on that. I'll comment on that because I saw that very, very distinctly when I first started my career at Goldman. They have like a Black network, like all these so-called affinity networks. So like a Latino network, LGBT, women's, Black. And the Black network, at least in the Salt Lake City office, I go and I'm like, oh great, I'm gonna these great Black people that are really successful at Goldman, and it's like half Africans. And notice I said Africans. Yep. They're not the same, and that's a huge thing that people don't understand because, my father's family can trace his history in the United States back to a courthouse that got burned in Virginia in the Civil War. We can't tell anything beyond that because the records were burned for the slave owners and whoever else. His mom's family, was on a plantation in Florida. They ran away in the 1700s or 1800s to the Bahamas, and one of my distant cousins was the prime minister that led the independence movement from Bahamas, from the British Empire. My mom's from Trinidad, and she moved here in the 70s to go to college. And so I get that like difference in experience. So I have both of it, right? So I have the history of, the US, the brutality, the disgrace of Civil War, Jim Crow, and all of that. But then I also have the pride that my mom had because she was raised in Trinidad where everyone is Black or brown, from the prime minister down. Nobody cared. You did whatever you wanted. You were proudly British because when she was born, it was part of the British Empire. Queen and country. She's super proud, of that. And so, but I totally get it. And a lot of non-blacks don't appreciate the difference. And then I think the worst thing is when a lot of African immigrants who come here, they come from wealthy families, and they'll talk to you about how their uncle's the king of the village or whatever, and they go home and are treated like royalty and all this stuff, and you can't relate because you have no concept of what they're talking about. And so a lot of them have that experience, and they come here and they look down on us because they see the
Talk about it. Talk about it. Talk about it.
Exactly. They see the opportunity to come and take advantage of it, as they should. They have every right to. They should, but we should too. But there's just a lot of context in there that is lost because they don't appreciate our history the way that we understand it. And to be honest, a lot of Black community leaders live rehash the past instead of move beyond it, and so that's held the community back. But I just wanted to just talk about that because it's something I've seen react in very real time, and I live it because I have both sides of it. So I have the immigrant story in my mother, and I have the we'll say the blood and soil story in my father. So I totally get it. But go ahead, Aaron, if you wanted to talk about the Jewish experience.
It's not even it's not really I don't think it's quite at all similar to the Black experience, but I'll just say that I guess to preface this, I should probably start with why a lot of Jews vote Democrat, and it's basically because generally speaking, people who are more secular vote Democrat and are therefore more to the left, whereas people who are more religious tend to lean more right. And when it comes to Jews, a plurality of Jews tend to be more secular. And actually, I'm one of them. I'm a Reformed Jew. I don't keep Shabbos. I don't keep kosher. My mom actually isn't even Jewish. So those like Ben Shapiro who are Orthodox don't consider me Jewish. It used to bother me. Now it doesn't. It's whatever. But the thing is that the Jews that tend to be more secular tend to equate progressivism with Judaism and act like social justice is what Jewish values are all about. And even I, as somebody not particularly religious, that drives me crazy for a whole assortment of reasons. And so that's why you see so many Jews out there, who are progressive and are like very ardently in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And is despite the fact that the movement, the Black Lives Matter leaders, their platform is very anti-Israel and very anti-Semitic. But yet you'll see some Jewish activists who are on the left. In fact, the Journal, which is the paper I work for, there's a column saying like, Black Lives Matter is more important right now. We'll talk about Israel later. And I'm just like, well, you can't fight racism with anti-Semitism. But to even say that is considered blasphemy in my own community. Honestly, I'm afraid that if I were to say that, like, I'd be fired. My boss is conservative, so I think he gets it. I'm pretty sure he agrees with me. But it's considered taboo, and it's just it really just drives me crazy how so many Jews, and so many people in my own community, are so willing to undermine us, whether it's supporting BDS or by allying with themselves with anti-Semites. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that I'm sure some of you are familiar with intersectionality, which is kind of the idea of there's hierarchies of oppression, and people who are supposedly more oppressed have more of a voice than those that don't. And Jews have always gone the short end of the stick when it comes to intersectionality, because we Jews are seen as like this all-powerful figures who control everything. And so that's why you see people like in the Sarsour just rail against Zionists and basically sort of poo-poo anti-Semitism. And a lot of progressive Jews was like, oh, well, see, they're hijacking intersectionality. See, we're real allies. We actually are victims too, and that's why we're good allies for Black Lives Matter and so forth. But I'm just like, no, we should reject this idea of intersectionality and maybe focus more on who people are as individuals, and call out all bigotry as we see it, and not ally ourselves with people who want to destroy us.
And I'll add in one thing to that. Aaron excellent summation.
Thank you.
Aaron broke down correctly the idea that if you're secular, you're going to be liberal for the most part. If you're religious, for Orthodox Jews are like 90% Republican. So, but there's also a second thing, and Aaron touched upon it. Leftists, for whatever reason, and Jews fall into this, reflexively side with the little guy over the big guy. They always see the little guy as the good guy and the big guy as the bad guy. And so that's how they could have the mindset of everything from, you know, the big bully Israel to the poor innocent Palestinians, when that's not the true narrative. It's really 23 Arab Muslim countries and one tiny country of Israel. But that same reflexiveness will see them say things like the drug company has to be the bad guy because they're big. They can't see a big corporation as somebody that produces a product that saves all of our lives. So it's this reflexive need to always side with the little guy. And the answer is to show these people that sometimes the big guy can actually be the good guy and the little guy can actually be the bad guy. At which point they'll then look at me and say, well, why does it have to be a guy? And then I just walk away.
So
Yeah,
you guys saw
I'll
Sarah's
just add
hand
to that.
raised. Do you have a question, Sarah?
Yeah, I just want to add on Aaron, and I'm from Europe, like I said earlier, and I noticed that I have a family in Germany and I have a family in France, and it's really disgusting that like 75 years after World War II, that anti-Semitism still exists. And now it's existing in such a harder level that, same like New York too, we can all agree that last couple of tweets of Bill de Blasio, the super dumb mayor of New York, that basically the worst mayor that ever happened. And like this, when this quarantine happened, and the specifically literally said like, oh, Jewish community, like, yeah, why don't you just give them more burden on our back? I was really upset, you know. I mean, I was really out of my mind when I read that.
Yeah, me too.
Because I grew up in this mentality where, you know, it's you know, World War II is a really big thing in Europe, you know what I mean? Like it's a very thing that people, I mean, my grandpa used to tell me stories how they used to hide people in the basements, how with the help of Orthodox Church, they helped them to escape like the Gestapo, and this was a really good shock for me. So my narrative is, the problem what I have with Black Lives Matter is they're very out terrorist. I'm sorry I have to say this, but this is a very dangerous ideology that Karl Marx had. They're using them just to completely destroy our Western civilization. You know what I mean? And on the end of the day, you are all Americans. I'm not American. I'm not born here, but I'll soon be. But this is a very dangerous ideology, because Karl Marx was a parasite who wrote a book, who used to live on other people's couches, and who just like, you know, who was a very dangerous mind. And plus, he was Jewish. I mean, his dad actually
and
like changed for Catholic, right?
Too, despite being Jewish.
Sarah, I'll just say this.
So I just want to. Sorry, I'm going to cut it. Sorry if I'm too long.
If we love this country, we'll have you as an American. And for anyone who doesn't understand what Black Lives Matter really stands for, I shared what we believe in the chat, so you can take a look at it and be appalled.
Well, they just a couple of days they were on TV and they said, you know, I mean, we're trained Marxists. Like, oh, thank you for telling us, because we didn't know that. It's obvious. It's just really.
Well, I'm glad.
I mean, this is really scary.
Because
because you know, this is what happened. The message of the racism is completely taken out of context. Like, instead of fighting the justice and said, okay, there is a police brutality that has to be solved, you're actually hiding under that message, and now the mask is completely falling out, and that's and young people believe in that. I mean, I'm still young, but you know, like a younger people, they believe in this narrative. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, are you really sure that that's possible? Because I know people who are, you know, kind of like a little, you know, darker than me, and they're coming from other countries and they succeed here, and there's issues, you know what I mean? But come on, it's really it's really making me uncomfortable and making everybody comfortable.
It's like Leo said, they live on that 1960s image of someone getting, black victim, white perpetrator. They just survive on it. And it's something that I didn't really think about until this most recent episode with George Floyd. But Black lives only matter. Well, Black lives don't matter to Black Lives Matter. It's a play on words. Mm-hmm. It's fundamentally, like, I say this in the chat all the time, we live in an upside down world. What matters to Black Lives Matter is when a Black person is killed by a white person, and they can exploit it. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And the rest of what we believes, or rest of what they talk about from the what we believes is just like complete shit. To be honest with you, it's just Marxist crap. But so many of Americans are taught that they need to fight for the little guy, as they should, but they're not. They're not actually doing that. They're creating more little guys by creating victimization of themselves and others, and it's a travesty. But yeah. So just adding that, and also again, as long as you love this country, I count you as an American.
I'm just saying this to everyone. Like I've been to when I first moved to America, like I came to that little a booth when you bring your papers, and I got my green card on lottery. So I came to that a little booth, and the guy smiled to me so big, like I'm coming, like I just won $1 million. And he literally told me, "Welcome to America." I'm like, oh my God, Germans, they just took me all over almost to my waist, I'm like, I passed the German border like a transit. They asked me a million questions, like I'm a freaking criminal. I'm like, what's happening here? What's something wrong over here? Something ain't right. I just have one question for you. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much. I wish probably someone else wants to talk. Okay. But my question is that did Obama did something for general fighting the racism in America? And my second question is that what do you feel that Donald Trump did? I know that there's some things that he did for a Black community specifically in America, but if you don't mind just telling me a little closer so I can understand how should I, from your perspective, who was a better president fighting the racism? Thank you so much for everyone.
So no president is really fighting racism. What they're doing is using language to communicate to certain segments of the population and create certain feelings about our history and the present. Barack Obama, before he became president, said some very good things. And one of the things I think he said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, was that it's going to be up to the next generation to move past, or basically move beyond the past. And then when he became president, he did a bunch of, it's not that he did some things, but it's elevating that narrative when he was president, that there's systemic racism, even tacitly, gave them fuel to the fire. And then the only thing Donald Trump really did wrong, he did two things wrong. One, and it's not really wrong, it's just style. He's not very tactful in his language, not very diplomatic.
He's very New York. He's very New York. Sorry if I'm not. He's very straight, blunt New York. That's when you see Donald Trump, that's New York. That's not America.
Well, it's not. I work at Goldman Sachs, right? So I know a lot of New Yorkers. I know a lot of very successful, powerful New Yorkers. So that's not New York. That's Donald Trump. That's his style. It's a choice, and so that's who he is and how he talks. But at the same time, he's a Republican. We've seen Democrats can get away with saying the most asinine things and have faced no recourse, or they said, well, he said that, but he's a Democrat, so we have to protect him, and he's moved past that. And so those are the two things Donald Trump did wrong. It's his style, and you can't change that, but then he's a Republican. And so that was bad enough for the Democrats. So
I got a slight opinion on this too. I don't really know that. I don't really see how you could take a policy and direct it to a certain racial group. It's that seems racist in and of itself to do that. Oh, what are you doing for the Chinese Americans? Right? What are you doing for the Pakistanis? Right? What are you doing for, all of this? But yet, for some reason, it's appropriate to say, what are you doing for Black America? Like it's some... it is a group, but it's it's some lobby or thing like that. And and I don't know if that's really the right way to say it, because Trump has done things like the opportunity zones, right? Like take a allow opportunity zone is where you identify disadvantaged neighborhoods typically, and then you give a 10-year tax break for if you want to develop there. And a lot of those disadvantaged areas are in African American communities. So that is how you kind of like are trying to like slide it in. But I don't really see how you could really do a policy that tackles that, because then you have a lot of people then come and say, well, those opportunity zones aren't going to Black Americans, they're going to Asians and Chinese people and Indians who set up 7-Eleven shops in there. So those opportunity zones aren't for us. So I don't really know how you could take a policy and say this is for Black Americans. He did do the thing with HBCUs where they don't have to come to the federal government to get money every single year. They're just in the massive appropriations bill that they have now. But I don't really know how to feel about that, about having a policy dictated to a certain racial group.
I have a cultural question. I guess Vernon can start with it, and if anybody else. And I'm older than you guys. I remember watching a TV show called Good Times, and it was about a Black family, and it had a strong father figure, discipline, love. It was just a very strong father figure. Now the family happened to be, it was about a poor Black family in Chicago, but the last 3 decades, if you watch any TV show, the father is a clown. Okay, whether it's Everybody Loves Raymond or The Simpsons, the father is just a doofus, and he's just another kid that the mom has to take care of. So what I'm wondering, and I'd like all of you guys to chime in, are there any programs on TV now that show positive father role models, and in the Black community, where you guys feel that Black people are portrayed accurately and positively?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. There's kind of like, and so when I watch, like, when I consume media, I'm not like, where are the Black people? I'm gonna go find them. Like, I don't go to like Netflix Black or like Amazon and look for the Black shit. Like, I don't watch it because, first of all, most of it is clown. It's clowning.
Yeah.
Like, Tyler Perry is the biggest asshole there is.
He's funny though. Tyler Perry's funny, man. That guy is.
But why? Because he's making fun of the Black community. He's not elevating it. He's making fun of it. That's all. The only reason he makes me. He's the most like highest paid in Hollywood, right? That's for a reason. And it's not because Black folks are buying his TV. We don't buy it. And so who is paying for that, right? So it's not like me and you are going and saying, "Geez, I wish I want to be like that guy." It's like no, like he's selling a clown image of Black America to white America. Fucking hate that guy. So the second thing is, I don't think you could find very many modern TV shows where men are depicted in a very like in a positive light at all. We're either confused, we're upset or angry, we can't be a good husband without cheating, or we're only a good husband if we have a strong wife. And so like there's no TV now, in my view, at least in the main kind of stream. And I could be wrong. I don't watch enough TV to like have a broad perspective, but like you never get the full package anymore. And so we're not projecting like the ideal. I think that was kind of like what we did 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe even to the 70s and 80s, to project an ideal that people could aspire to. We stopped doing that as the norm. We started emphasizing divergence, and it could be a number of different ways. It could be sexual deviance, either infidelity or homosexuality, or it could be what have you, like the father's just abusive and alcoholic or something, and then that just became the norm. And so that's my view of it. A very strong view. Again, I never watched TV when I was a kid. It's like, I wish Superman was Black. Like, I was never like that. I was like, no, like you wanted to be Superman because he was super, right? Like,
yeah.
And I'm just like, I was like, geez, I wish he was Black. Why doesn't he look like me? It's like, no, like I want to be big and strong like Superman, right? Like That's what everybody. That's what you.
I mean,
That's what a normal person wants, right? To look at someone you're supposed to look up to and say, why aren't they more like me? Then you just don't get it, right? So, like I don't go to church and say, why can't Jesus be more like me?
Hey, we had Static Shock though. That was a cartoon.
Why can't Jesus be like me?
That's the quote of the week, Vernon.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Vernon, and I guess Spencer too. From the remarks from our speaker from Terrell, was there anything that either stood out to you that you want to highlight, or was there anything that surprised you from what he said?
I think the highlight was that, and he didn't say this directly, but he alluded to it, is that the Republican Party has a huge opportunity to kind of pick up for decades lost. And that's by being proactive. It doesn't mean pandering, but it does mean being proactive and being real. And that's kind of why I asked in that question at the end about how, like, it was essentially how can white America relate to Black America? Because I've lived in both my whole life and had to bridge that gap. And I think a lot of, like, there's a systemic racism, but there is, self-selection or selective segregation in the world. Like you're not going to be like, I want to go find a Black person and just like see what they think and talk about, and Black people are definitely not going to be like, I want to have a white friend and just go out and do that kind of stuff, right? So you have to be socialized in a way that you're just kind of open to experience and difference in new people. And I think, like, conservatives, like, you're not going to win the Black vote or the Latino vote by saying, like, but the Constitution says this. Blacks are taught the Constitution is racist. So if you're waving the Constitution in my face, not only are you a white person, you default racist, you're taking this racist document and putting it in my face, right? And then if you show me the Declaration of Independence, I'm going to be like, well, I've never, like, what about, George Floyd? Why didn't, wasn't his life created equal? And so there's a narrative that's taught. And so I think, or told, I think it just kind of, like, there's a huge moment right now, a huge moment for the Republican Party to right the wrongs of America's past in a way that I think more and more Blacks are open to. As polarizing as people like Candace Owens and Larry Elder can be for both Black or for left and right, there are more people who are listening to what they have to say from in the Black community than ever. Blexit wouldn't exist if there was no Candace Owens, and it wasn't founded by white people like Black Lives Matter. It was founded by an actual Black person, right? And so she's doing tremendous things, whether we agree with her or not. Like Leo said, you've got to share facts, and so I agree with him in the sense that they can be very coarse, but if you don't get those coarse facts, you don't get the full picture. And sometimes they just need to share that soundbite that Blacks are way more likely to become another Black person than by a cop of any race, right? Or of anyone else, right? And so, like, you just have to hear that, and at some point, eventually, there does need to be a way forward, like positive things. But I think the most important thing that he alluded to is that the Republican Party has a tremendous moment. I don't think they're seizing on it. And Tim Scott did his police reform bill, but and the Democratic Party, basically shut it down. It's no different than the Civil Rights Act in the 60s.
Let me ask you this then. Aside from Trump, which Black or African Americans can break through the media barrier, aside from Trump?
Well, Candace Owens has. Larry Elder has.
But you heard what Leo said about her, and I do kind of agree. Who else can?
There are tons of others. There are tons of others. And I mean, yes, conservatives are sometimes silenced, if you will, on Twitter, shadow banned, other things, or outright banned or suspended, etc. Yes, it does happen, but there are like I've shared so many links to other conservative leaders, mostly young, who are Black, or thought leaders who are Black, that I found on Twitter, right? I would have never known. Like, when I became involved in Republican politics 10 years ago, I'd already like just kind of resigned myself to being like the outlier because my whole family is either independent or Democrat. Everyone in my family, and so it was like, you know, I just knew I had to do what I believed and what I thought was right, and I was never like,
oh, sorry,
you know, the big kind of, I was never trying to be the biggest voice. You know, it's not that. It's just like relating to people on an individual level. So I think like what you're suggesting is true, but like if you go follow Candace, for instance, or Larry Elder on Twitter, and then you just kind of look at who follows them and who retweets them, you'll find a lot more younger, especially Black conservatives. One of the most notorious ones is like C.J. Pearson, right? He like just graduated like high school, went to Alabama, like declined Harvard or Princeton or whatever, like made a big thing about it. But he's young, he's well spoken, you know, really polished kid. He's not brash, but there are others who are kind of brash too. But there are a lot more out there, I think, in the age of Twitter and Trump than would believe. And I remember like I know other Republicans who were Black in California before like Trump. Some of them, you know, became never Trumpers because they watched CNN, and then like, you know, they've felt, you know, they're the Biden Republicans now. But I've like known that like there were others for a while, but you know, I know that under the Reagan years there were a lot more too, right? Because Trump is just like 2020, 2016, like he's the new Reagan, right? Reagan in a new era, and so there was a huge moment during Reagan too. The GOP totally flopped on it, right? Which is why Bill Clinton, part of the reason why Bill Clinton came back and became the first Black president to some people, right? Like I remember, like, you know, I have family who would still consider him the first Black president. And in some ways, he's more Black than Barack Obama.
Who, Trump or Clinton?
Long answer to a question. I hope I got to the point there that you were looking at.
I'll recommend one person that we should definitely follow. I think he's brilliant, and unlike Candace Owens and Larry Elder, he's very understated. He takes a quiet approach, but it's very effective. I was going to say Gianno Caldwell.
Oh, he's good too. Yeah,
he's fantastic, and he's from Chicago. When he writes about Chicago violence, it's must read.
Yeah, there are a lot of others. You can find them if you want to look for them. Twitter's the best way. And so they're out there. One that's kind of
what
like,
about this guy, Jesse Lee Peterson? This like a radio host guy. What's the deal with him? What's the deal with this radio host guy? Like a Jesse Lee
Jordan Peterson.
Oh, Jordan Peterson.
Jesse Lee. No, this is a radio host.
Yeah, that's Jesse Lee Peterson. He's very, very conservative.
It's like a
well, his thing is he's a minister, and he has an organization called Bond, where
he's in LA. Yeah.
He's that guy is so savage.
A lot of people have been coming to the conservative party through him. Another thing that I found with Leo said that was interesting. To me, the main message that I got is that that the Democratic Party, as it moves left and as they keep on moving left, is going to leave some people behind, and they're just going to join the Republican Party. And we have to be there in order to capture them and to grab them, because exactly. To Leo, he said to Leo, in his mind, he's been the same person he's always been. But now the Democratic Party has gone so far to the left that he can't support it anymore. So therefore, he's basically on our side, because we kind of just stayed the same. So I think that was the main message that I took, is that the more over to the left that they go, there are people who are going to disagree, but they don't want to be called racist and sexist and homophobic and transphobic and xenophobic and all these other kinds of terms, and they're longing for a party, because the DNC is just going to go with the Black Lives Matter party, and then the GOP should be there outreaching or doing something in some way to be like, hey, Democratic Party gone too left for you? Come over here.
Yeah, that last part's important because a lot of Republicans, like I've mentioned this in the chat. Republicans just assume, oh, like they'll figure it out and then they'll vote GOP. Like we never or don't historically or traditionally do outreach, reach out to people. Not only do we not let them know that we're there, what we stand for, we just assume that they'll get it eventually when they grow up or see the facts, and then like they'll be automatically become Republicans, and it doesn't happen that way. So we have to be active in recruiting new people, and bringing people over, not just letting
without
them
being killed.
What's that?
Without being killed.
No one's gonna kill you.
Yeah.
No one's
Well,
gonna kill you.
basically, one of the points is that we cannot change minds from a distance.
Right.
Yes.
Well, unless it's on Zoom, then you could change minds or Facebook.
Yeah,
or...
nobody can
Okay,
throw
that's
a
good.
brick on you.
I have to leave, and I wanted to thank you guys for this whole conversation. It's been really awesome, like learning from all you guys and everything that you guys say. It's pretty cool to know there's like a lot of conservatives here. We didn't know. I mean,
well, thank you for joining. I'm just gonna put my plug in for West LAYR. Yeah, become a member. I'm pretty sure you guys who are here who got the email are. So, I mean, hey, join us, get involved in all these different committees that we have. We're really trying to reach out, trying to organize, and really trying to impact our communities, because it's more important now than ever before. So,
definitely.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Welcome,
Kevin. Have a good night, brother.
Bye, Kevin.
And let me know when is the next event to join as well.
Bye, Kevin. Have a good night.
Bye. Thanks.
Sarah, are you going to run for assembly?
For me?
The first question to Leo sounded like you're like a campaign stump. So,
No, this is just...
and then you said you're not a citizen yet. So.
No, I'm in a protest. Hopefully, I'll get it by November. I'm like very, very like, please, immigration, call me. I'm ready. I'm ready for you.
We're ready for it. So. Question about your guys' thoughts. I was kind of hoping for something more when I actually don't know Leo Terrell. I haven't been following him, and this is the first I've seen of him or heard from him. But so I don't know like his politics or where he's like stood on issues previously. But I was a little disappointed by the answer he gave about where he stands on in terms of like leaning more left, and like it sounded like equality is kind of he wants like that message portrayed more up front and center. But I'm wondering if you guys think is that a strategy that he's using to try to like say that he's more on the left when really he's kind of more conservative, or do you think that he really does?
It's a good question. Yeah, I don't know.
In order to keep his credibility, I think he feels like he has to.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Weave this very stormy weather in like the best way he can. So, but I think, yeah, you're right, Jen. That I mean, but if he were to be hard lined, like he would just.
It loses a lot of his audience.
Well, no. Like I think what Spencer said is so like true, especially in the Black community, but Latino community too. Like we're all like naturally conservatives.
Yeah.
We just vote Democrat.
Yeah.
Because the Republican Party has just flat out failed.
Yeah.
At trying at all effectively to find people that have a natural alignment with the GOP and get them to vote for it. And so I don't think he's had to really change his views. He just realized like I'm not a socialist, and so and I'm definitely not an anarchist. So I've got no place to go if I want to be if I want my voice to matter.
I mean, I'm just gonna piggyback up on that again. So I do the outreach coordination for South Los Angeles Inglewood Republican Assembly, and when we go out and we talk to Black folk, they're anti gun control. They want to be able to protect themselves. I mean, they are pro business. They want to make money. They don't want to pay taxes. I mean, they're religious, so they like religious freedom, and they want school choice. Once you explain it to them, they're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. It's so crazy. Like you just go through the list, and African Americans and Hispanics, they're just a natural fit for conservatism, but then it's something when it comes time to vote, that value system doesn't click in. They can't click it in with the whole racism, narrative.
It's the
And
media. That's the problem. The media are the problem.
Yeah.
Corporate media are the enemy of the people.
But you also need the GOP to go into those areas. So for the GOP proper itself, Vernon, do you think for the GOP proper, is it the outreach? Is the lack of that out of laziness or fear or something else?
Yes. I would just say, like, part of it's like the media, but a big part of it too is just like, again, like the socialization. Like when all you see on TV, is Democrats on TV talking about how they care about the community, they're going to take care of you, and the black leaders are elevated to positions of prominence. So, and no matter what they say, they're still in power, and they can just say the most asinine things, and they're still in prominence and whatever, and they're lauded as being champions of the underdog. And especially as an ethnic minority, and specifically as a lower socioeconomic class ethnic minority, like, why wouldn't you vote for them? And so I think there's just that aspect. And before, like, the age of, I'd say really before now, the Democratic Party was like really centrist. Like, all politics in America before now, like, by global standards, the U.S. is like just right wing. Like, has always been just right wing. Even Democrats were, like, by European standards, like right wing, at least center right. And that just really changed in the last, I'd say, 10 years or so, when you have the populist element on the left take prominence, which manifested in the huge push towards, I'd say, communism, really, or anarchy, which then manifests itself in authoritarianism and totalitarianism. And so, like that's been like the modern thing. And I think it's why a lot of blacks, a combination of things, are like looking up and saying, okay, what else is there? But the GOP historically has been like the party of, civility and yesteryear and lower tax cuts. And like,
yes, corporations.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and like, if you're black, like, I mean, sure, you don't, like, nobody wants to pay more taxes. No one's like, my God, I want to give more money to the government. Nobody says that. But like,
but we don't pay taxes already. So hey,
if you don't own a small business, like, you're not really concerned about tax cuts. Like, you're more concerned about your kids' education, if anything, or if you have kids, or whether or not you can put food on the table. And so I think, again, I was trying to allude to that in that question I asked Leo. There's like just the cultural gap. If you're black and you have family who served in World War II, the stories you told are probably about when they got home and were still subject to segregation. You're not told about when they stormed D-Day and had victory and everything else. You're told about when they got back and how they were mistreated. And so if your grandparents tell you about how they served honorably or whatever else, they can show you their medals and everything. You're proud of that. You should be. You shouldn't. Everyone should be proud to be American. But you just have to realize that, again, the narrative, the story for us is so different than it is for you. And so you have to be able to bridge that gap. And the GOP's just struggled at it. And what I would say a lot of people perceive as racism is what I call arrogant indifference. You're proud and you don't really care to understand other people. And so you see them as a threat to you and your existence if they have a different view than you. Sometimes that's true, right? Obviously, Marxists are a threat to everybody. Like, nobody except Marxists thinks they're good people. But at the same time, I think there's just been an inability to connect the dots between, the black vote and where they kind of historically align. But again, before the modern era, the Democratic Party was either centrist or center-right by global standards. Maybe not by U.S. standards, but by global standards, the Democratic Party was the Big Ten party, catch-all. And so
I wanted to.
But yeah.
Sorry, Brennan, are you finished?
Yeah, I'll shut up. Thanks.
No. I just wanted to go off of Jennifer's question about like opportunity. So the one thing that I've always identified with in the party is the concept that like Republicans are the party of equal opportunity, and the fact that everybody gets the same opportunity. And it's not about evening the playing field, but the fact that we all go into it and everybody gets a fair shot. It doesn't matter your background, where you're from, what you look like, any of those things. And as someone who didn't grow up upper middle class, even though I am white, I have always really pushed through that narrative of just because someone may have more privilege than me, I'm going like it should be an even playing field. And that when Leo said, equal opportunity, anti-affirmative action, which, was a big Republican hot point, Democratic hot point, 5-10 years ago, and it's now resurfacing now. That's where you can bring certain, communities on board. I know it's a huge issue with the Asian community, but there's a difference where the Democrats in general don't believe in that, because they want, it to be an even playing field where, the person who's had it harder is up above the people who've had more privilege. And that in general isn't really equal opportunity. Something I've always had a hard time understanding. And then also going back to your point with, Republicans and Democrats have actually been pretty center previous to, I would say 2008. Since Obama's election, been pretty much similar goals for, Republicans and Democrats. And there's been a lot more compromise and working together in Congress. The last 10 years has really just shown us that basically we're both growing to the far ends of the spectrum, and there's nobody's willing to cross the other side of the aisle to work together or compromise. And the perfect example is the policing bill, which was passed, and the fact they refused to talk to any Republicans. When the Republicans put up amendments, they refused to even hear the amendments. They voted them all down. And you just see this complete ideology of not willing to work with someone who inherently doesn't believe the same thing as you, which is crazy because in general, people are typically down the middle. Most voters in the United States, most people who I would even say aren't educationally informed about, laws and their rights and what's going on in Congress, they are typically independents declined estates, people who don't really fit one policy, or one political party over the other. And the hard part we're having is not being able to loop those people in because they don't understand, and we're too worried about being anti-Democrat and they're too worried about being anti-Republican.
Yeah, you're so right, Ariana. And I would just say, like, the part of equal opportunity is really important too. That's one of the reasons the GOP, like, I moved over. I was never like a Democrat. Voted for Obama in 2008, but I was not a register of the party. And then I had a series of very kind of interesting conversations with friends and family, and then ended up watching a lot of MSN and like the Young Turks, and them like blasting like Glenn Beck and Fox News, and I was like, but they're right. So I got red pilled by Cenk Uygur. And so,
oh my God.
Yeah, so like that's how I moved over, because the message is like, equality, opportunity, fairness, and then really patriotism. Like I never really got that, even like from the Democrats. There was never this deep sense of patriotism and love of country. And when you really look at the world, like we're not only blessed to live here, but we have a huge obligation to make sure that this country lasts for the next generation, right? And so like the deep sense of patriotism always kind of struck me from the GOP. I would just say, like, about the gridlock, a lot of people look happening in the political landscape and say, oh, like, why doesn't Congress work anymore? Like, I'm not making fun of you, particularly Ariana, but I think a lot of people just see that and they're like, oh, like, partisan gridlock, GOP doesn't do anything. But I kind of looked at, like, just big picture, like the arc of US political history, and the country is moving like pretty like slowly back to the right after a long kind of slog to the left that really started probably 100, 120 years ago. And like one of the biggest things I like to remind people is that before Newt Gingrich, there hadn't been a Republican Speaker of the House in 80 or 40 years. So
Yeah.
Reagan was president, Democrat Speaker of the House, both terms. Before him, the last like Republican Speaker of the House was like in the 50s. Before him, there had only been one other one in the last like 30 years. And so the Democrats have controlled the United States domestic agenda basically uninterrupted for 80 of the last 100 plus years. And so what you're seeing now is the GOP actually getting power back. That started with Reagan. Before Reagan, like the GOP was basically on a going down, almost
downhill trajectory.
downhill trajectory. Reagan was an inflection point that breathed life into the party. And I think Donald Trump is going to be that for our generation. And so what you're seeing is like now, because when the Democrats are the majority party, Republicans have to work with Democrats to get anything done. So if they want to bring home the bacon for their constituents, they had to work with Democrats to do it. And so that's why there was bipartisanship. And now we're seeing the GOP is actually winning by sticking harder and harder and harder to its principles and values and crystallizing what those are. And so, since Newt Gingrich, we've had 3 GOP Speaker of the Houses. Eric Cantor, Liz Cheney, Kevin McCarthy, and John Boehner, so 4. And so we've had 4 since Newt. So there's been a huge shift back to the right. It's been a good thing. And that's why I think you're seeing less partisanship now, because the GOP is learning they don't have to work with Democrats to get stuff done. They can stand up for something and they'll get reelected for just standing up. And so maybe that's my view on it. But just
definitely that's a great point to make. I think my idea is more of the fact that like Democrats or Republic, like perfect example is the policing bill. They chose not to even talk to any Republicans. So it's, how are you passing a bill for the whole entire United States when you are eliminating 50% of the population? That's more of the, no bipartisan in Congress is when you pass a bill and you only talk to senators or House members that are in your party. How are you even considering what the rest of the United States constituents want? So that's more where it comes from, which is,
I think
blows my mind that we have bills passed because half of our country isn't even taken into consideration.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny. I think it was it James pointed out early this week or last week in the chat that 9 of the 10 most bipartisan members of the Senate are Republicans. They're still used to having to work with the Democrats, so they're still willing to do it, but the Democrats are just taking a harder and harder stance and then manipulating the media. So that's true too, but I digress. So.
I also think, Jennifer, that Leo may have a harder time saying, oh, my views have changed, only because not just, he makes his profession off of being a Democratic commentator, specifically, at least right now on conservative news shows. So to say, oh, I'm more of a Republican, or, oh, my views have changed, that kind of discredits the role he's portrayed for himself in the media spotlight. But obviously the media spends that and puts their own narrative on it for him. So I mean, it's a give and take there that I'm sure is difficult for him, or anybody who navigates media that way.
Sarah, I see your hand raised again.
I appreciate him pointing out that he does look at things on a case by case basis, and I think that that's true for a lot of things. There's certain policies that maybe are more liberal policies that somebody might gravitate to. The issues are important to different people, so I guess I also wanted to know what issues is he paying attention to, but he also did answer that at a different time. He said that education is the new civil rights movement, which I think is really important, and that I don't know that that's a bipartisan issue. I think that's just an issue.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think he has such an interesting background, and I love hearing from people who teach who, you know, aren't part of the far left movement and worked within the teacher unions, but teachers and people who are actually on the foregrounds and have an experience in that and can give real insight to, you know, people like us who don't have kids and who aren't, you know, in the education system anymore or aren't in public schools, and we don't know what's going on. We only kind of get hearsay and see what's going on in the media. So it's important.
Sarah, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I would like to add something if that's okay with you.
You're the only one who raises your hand, so.
So what I realized in the last couple of months that it's a very dangerous and very interesting thing to look at, that basically Republican Party is not very united right now. Basically Trump is fighting the whole fight alone, and there are some people they're doing the fight, but from the like a senior majority like Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, they're basically hiding under Nancy Pelosi's skirt. You know, I mean, they're not. You know, they have to. So, but they do. Come on, they're just hiding, and I'm like,
so true. That's a great.
I mean, guys, this guy is here has to fight
Aaron's gonna steal
coronavirus.
that, by the way.
What's that?
I'm sorry?
Aaron's gonna steal that, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah, hey, of course, go ahead. It's a free country, right?
Sarah, I would not read too much into that, though, because if you go back like the last 30, 40, 50 years, the party out of power is always going to be more united, A, because there's less of them, and B, it's very easy to be united when your entire message is, they're in power, they suck, put us in power. But once you get into power and then you actually have to do things, that's when the knives come out. So the fact is I'd rather be in the majority and have us fighting amongst ourselves, which is totally normal, than be in the minority, united, and you get nothing.
That is true. I agree in that. But look, for example, Mitt Romney. Come on, give me a break. I mean, you're like you're basically like telling me that you're gonna vote for Biden. And what's that lady with the hair, with the brown hair, Fiona, whatever her name is.
Yeah.
That basically you're just, and Nikki Haley. I'm just waiting for her. She's gonna be like a last nail on the how you say, and the last nail on the yeah. Yes. So the basic, yeah, I understand. But thing is that I mean, what is fighting? Tim Cotton is fighting, and that the bunch of young people are him. But now it's our time, like as a young conservatives, to shine. Now it's our time to take over from those people who are just want to wait for work for a paycheck of the big corporations. Now it's our time. I mean, yours, because I'm not gonna.
So like I said, you know, when you're ready to file papers for assembly, let me know. But until then, I think two things. You're right. All of us are really frustrated with a lot of GOP leadership. They're spineless. You know, don't stand up for anything when it really comes push to shove. But the party, at least according to Donald Trump's internal polling, is pretty united. There's 5% of Republicans who still watch CNN. And then want to vote for Joe Biden or not Donald Trump. So the party itself, the electorate, like the voters, are pretty united. The elected officials who serve are kind of, you know, varied. The other thing I'll add is, it's kind of like a piggyback. I know there's been talk about starting a college Republicans chapter at Santa Monica College, and I want to nominate you to be chair. So you and I should be in touch after this. Like, find me on Facebook or email me.
Me?
Definitely. Yeah, you.
Santa Monica College, are you sure?
You can nominate.
Email to Sarah and you can connect her with Eric.
Yeah. I will connect with Eric. That's what I'm saying. She and I need to link up after this.
Yes.
Definitely. So that
I'm actually willing to do that. I was actually thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I'm a little scared, but you're here to motivate me, okay?
Yeah, I live 15 minutes from Santa Monica College, so in Marina Del Rey. So I'm like right there, a resource, you know, on the west side. So, but yeah, I gotta jump, guys. Great chat. Sarah, please, again, super 100%, like, please message me. Find me on Facebook, email, so we can make that happen, okay?
Bye, Vernon.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
So I don't have Facebook, but exchange emails somehow.
Vernon, you're copied on the email I sent Sarah. Oh, he hopped off. I just wanted to mention your quick question, Sarah, that you had about, you know, the leadership and what's happening. I think what we saw on the left side with young people like AOC coming in and kind of disrupting the, as they would call it, you know, like career politicians, you have younger people who are stepping up. I mean, Elise Stefanik, I think is her name. She's the young woman in Congress. She's doing amazing things. You have the Republican who just beat out King in Iowa, who is going in. You know, that's a huge way for Republicans there. I posted in the Facebook chat. There's a 24-year-old Republican who just unseated the like long-term career politician in his district going towards November. So there are younger people in the party trying to make waves, and even in California. So most of the people on here know Joe Collins and Errol Weber. And I mean, I don't personally think that either one of them really has an actual chance of winning this time around. But what they're doing for the Republican Party, the Black community, young people in general, is they're out there, they're doing the grassroots movement that Democrats do. And they're taking those tactics and they are employing them for the right. And they're bringing people to the party and to the conversation who've never been invited before or who never felt welcome or didn't even really know that we existed in Los Angeles County. So although it may not be on a national level or it may not be, you know, breaking news, I think that, you know, this time around, bringing new people in and continuing to have young, you know, eccentric candidates like them, it will continue and it'll grow and it potentially we'll see a flip sometime in the future, fingers crossed. But I do think it's possible and it will happen. It's just going to take time. But there are people out there on the you know, on the ground doing work. It's, you know, not going to change overnight, unfortunately, but fingers crossed that little by little, the more people get involved, the more young people get involved, the more we make a presence known that, again, Republicans are not old white men. There's a wide majority of people who identify with the Republican Party. I think it's going to make an impact. So.
I just want to add one more little small thing, and I read somewhere, I don't know where, I have to figure out where I read, that actually there's a lot of new independent voters in the country. Like
yeah, I mean, I know, for example, even in California, there were a lot of people who felt disadvantaged. So over the last, I think, 2 election cycles, independents have become the second political party registered, at least in LA County, to Republicans, which is crazy. And I can't speak to a national level because I haven't read a lot about it. If anybody else has, they definitely can jump in. But I think that goes back to even the stigma of people being afraid of being identified as a Republican and, you know, that somebody's going to find out. And so they change their political party affiliation or they don't register as a Republican, even though they identify as a Republican.
That's part of it, but sadly, the other part of it is worse, which is a lot of people who are conservatives who are just disgusted with the Republican Party. I'm a Republican. I believe in the party. But I know that Sean Hannity went on a rant about a year or two ago and said he was leaving the party, re-registering as an independent, as a conservative, and then that led to a lot of people doing that. Whereas I'm more of a party guy. But yeah, a lot of it is just disaffected conservatives.
What a time to be alive, huh?
There's a lot of complaints. I mean, it depends what state you live in, what county you live in. What'd you say, Eric?
It was pre-Trump, Sarah. It was a lot of conservatives have gotten very upset with, like, Republicans 60 times when they were out of power voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And they said, just give us the House, give us the Senate. And then, so really this kind of started in 2014, that after they got the House and then after they got the Senate, and then all of a sudden, once they got the White House as well, all of a sudden, it was easy to say, well, repeal Obamacare when you knew that Obama was going to veto that. But then once it actually had a chance of becoming law, they all turned chicken. And so that led to a huge backlash because like you said earlier, outside of Tom Cotton and a few others, it's easy to talk a good game when you're out of power, but Republicans gained power and then all of a sudden became afraid of the New York Times, and conservatives are fed up with that.
Yeah, I just don't understand. You need to explain me for Americans. You guys grew up here. Who is voting for these people like AOC and what's the like Ilhan and all this like a gang mob? Who voting for these people? Like, where is their people minds? I don't understand that.
Our districts, we have 435 congressional districts, and what happens is that over the last few decades, there's something called gerrymandering, which is where politicians draw districts to guarantee that they'll get reelected. So out of these 435 districts, about 400 of maybe 350 to 400 of them are either solid Republican or solid Democrat. Very few of them are competitive. And so the only way somebody like AOC is going to lose is in a Democrat primary, not in a general election, because you've got 80% or 70 to 80% Democrats in her district. And with Ilhan Omar's district, thank you, Barack Obama, and I don't care who gets offended by this, he imported 70,000 Somalis from Somalia and put them all in one area so that you would have a Somali district. And that's how Ilhan Omar got elected.
And now that city burns, right?
Well, I'm not going
That
there.
is interesting analysis.
I'm not going there.
More politically incorrect than Eric. Somalis are the Palestinians of East Africa.
Well, I'm not going there. I'm just saying gerrymandering exists, and every 10 years, that's why 2020 is a big deal, because the 2020 election will not only decide the White House, the Senate, and Congress, but it will decide who in most states, like Iowa has a nonpartisan commission, and which is why they have more turnover, but most states, the governor sets the redistricting plan, and so whoever wins the governorships in 2020 is pretty much going to decide who controls the Congress for the next 10 years. And I'll add in one more thing. This is how cynical politics is, but the reason why Newt Gingrich 25 years ago was so awesome is in Georgia, the Congressional Black Caucus said, we want more blacks to have more representation. And at the time, there were 8 Democrats from Georgia and 3 Republicans. And so Gingrich said, okay, let's take all the black people in Georgia, put them in the same 2 or 3 districts so that you can have black representatives. But then what happened is that the whole rest of the state, by removing the black people from there, it made those places conservative. So black people got more power in Georgia, but Democrats got destroyed. And it went from like 8 Democrats and 3 Republicans to 10 Republicans and 1 Democrat. They did the same thing in South Carolina, where James Clyburn, they'll never ever get rid of him, but then the whole rest of the state is conservative. So be careful what you wish for, you just might get it.
I'm so sorry. I'm constantly interrupting you. Who do we have in California as a strong Republican candidate for governor? Like, Gavin Newsom is going to fail. This guy is going to fail. You'll see, because we're 55 billion in debt and somebody has to pay for that, and the taxpayer is going to pay for that. Besides Arnold Schwarzenegger, but he's not actually a Republican.
We have chased out the conservatives. I'll defer to Ariana, and then I'll offer my thoughts.
All I was going to say is the one thing to note is that gerrymandering does go on both sides. So both parties use it, and it's beneficial to both, but it also, messes up both parties.
Only Democrats sue over it.
What'd you say, Grant?
But only the Democrats sue over it when it doesn't go their way.
That's true.
Yeah.
True. The other thing to add as far as like conservatives feeling disengaged, I know a lot of people here, and for those who don't know the breakdown, the way that like the Republican Party in general functions is that there's the national party, and then each state has their state party, and then each county has their own county parties. And depending on what state you live in and your involvement, you can be in a county party that's really great and really involved. However, CAGOP, which is the California Republican Party, has had a couple issues over the years. In my personal opinion, I love Jessica Milan Patterson, who is the current chairwoman. I think she's doing phenomenal things. There are a lot of people who've been in the party for a long time who disagree, but that's, in my belief, we agree to disagree. That's all right. That's the beauty of being Republican. However, LAGOP, in my opinion, has never really hit the nail on the head. Always really kind of been a fluke. And I think that that's really led to the downfall of Republicans being elected and or supported in LA County. So that's why I think you don't see as many Republicans elected to local office or elected to statewide office. And really the only Republicans you see in LA County elected are on the borders of OC and LA County and on the borders of Ventura and LA County. And Ventura and OC both typically tend to lean more Republican than Democrat. So, and that just goes to show that their county parties know what they're doing compared to LA. And I think that people, because they don't feel that there's a party engagement for voters and for people who give money and people who want activism, I think that that's how people get turned away. So I think that that's another big fluke with our county and something that a lot of people who've been involved for a while want to change, especially like with our organization. Vernon has some great ideas about growing and how to bring young people in who didn't know we exist or feel like the Republican Party has not been for them in the years prior. As far as governor goes, I mean, I have my own opinions, but I think that I don't think Republicans have a chance in the next 2 cycles to have a governor. I think that, as everybody says, you're going to have to see us crash and burn before a Republican can come in and build us up. But that's my personal opinion.
And I'll add in one thing is that, the mother's milk of politics is money, and the deep pocketed Republican donors who can write 6-figure checks like it's candy, they're very moderate. And whenever a conservative comes on the scene, they then force a moderate on the party and just flood money. Like, I'll give you an example. A few years ago, we had a really great conservative running for the U.S. Senate, Chuck DeVore, down the line conservative, true believer, and the party elders, who, again, a bunch of rich, bald white guys, they forced Carly Fiorina down our throats, and she had so much money that DeVore didn't stand a chance. And so it really is, if a conservative is going to win, it's going to have to be somebody with a truckload of hard dollars, because the machine that has all the money right now is with the moderate wing of the party, not the conservatives.
Yeah. So I have a story that sort of goes along, illustrates the point you're making, Eric. And this is sort of it's off the record, which means you can't release it to anyone. So this story stays here, but basically it involves Mark Moiser, who some of you may know.
critics to go pound sand.
Yeah, and that's part of Trump's appeal is the fact that he was almost like Teflon. Because he just tells haters like, yeah, fuck you, or on Twitter or whatever. Like that's why Republicans like him. It's because he's willing to like to say fuck you to all the right people.
But it's very easy. Again, it's easy for him to do that because his attitude is, look, if I don't have this job, I've got $3 billion and a smoking hot wife. I don't care.
Well, the
what about Peter Thiel? What about Peter Thiel?
Oh, Peter Thiel.
I'm sorry. I'm constantly interrupting you. I'm really, really sorry. I'll mute.
Oh, Peter
no, you're fine. Go ahead, talk about it, Aaron.
I mean,
what about Peter Thiel?
I can just Peter Thiel is a very hardcore libertarian candidate. So he has. I mean, he's even more like I consider myself a big free market guy, but he's like even more so than I am. To the point where he defends monopolies, which I just a bridge too far for me. He's also very like socially liberal, so he's very like pro-gay marriage.
How come he spoke in the Republican National Convention? I mean, didn't he say, "I am gay, I'm conservative," like Donald Trump? I don't. So how come he's just faking all that?
He didn't say that.
No, he's not faking. He's a centrist. He's centrist right.
I mean,
he's centrist.
He flat out said that like he supports like the transgender bathroom bills and stuff.
Okay, so I think that goes back to a larger principle ideology here in the United States that there are other political parties besides Republicans and Democrats, but we do technically work on a two-party system. So although there are a lot of libertarians and people who, I would say Green Party, but I feel like the libertarian is kind of really branched out as our third party. The likelihood of anybody running on that platform and winning is so small. So people who identify with those party platforms have to fall in line if they want to be on a bigger landscape with the two-party system. So that's kind of why somebody who may be fiscally conservative but socially liberal would identify as one or the other.
Everybody have a good night. Ariana, thank you for putting together a wonderful program. And as I typed in the chat thingy, or at least I think I did, all fireworks are shut down for LA County, but there are a couple shows in Orange County. So I'm going. If anybody wants to do something on July 4th, reach out to Ariana or reach out to me, and everybody have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm not ending the meeting. I have no authority to do that. I'm just vacating.
Actually, I was going to give you guys like a 5-minute warning. So I'm technically Leo's Chicago comments are very, very real. My mom lives in central Illinois, which is like rural Illinois, and we're kind of in the middle of nowhere here. And it's really crazy because living in the city in LA, policy is dictated off of where I live, so it totally makes sense. But being here at my mom's for the last 2 months, it is mind-blowing how policy on a state level is made for Chicago and how Chicago affects places like where my mom lives. The town my mom lives in has a population of 500. It's very, very small. Yeah. So, and like where my grandma lives is population 4,000. It's like all the towns around here are less than 20,000 people all throughout the counties. And so it's just crazy. Policy is mandated based off of one city in one part of the state. It's the only city, like big city in the part of the state, but everything else is affected because of this one place. So it's very interesting, and it's a very different kind of perspective from living in LA and being in the city and having our mayor come through with laws because of what's going on in our city. So it's just interesting. But hearing the Chicago stuff, people out here in the other part of Illinois despise Chicago because of what it stands for, what it represents.
Well, yeah, because Chicago is a city known for like, it's not just what's crime, but just all the.
Oh.
What's happening with this internet?
All right. Well, I am taking off, and I want to say, Grant, you're wearing a gorgeous T-shirt. So.
Yeah, what is on your T-shirt? I want to ask.
Eric above you makes them.
You're too, Eric. Yours too, Eric. Wow,
Oh,
that's
but
amazing.
I'm not wearing one of my designs though. This is George W. Bush dressed as an Orthodox Jew.
Oh, that is amazing.
Passionate. That's Melania. Melania is from my country.
Yeah, I got this.
Oh, really? Okay.
Tribute to W.
Yeah, right.
But no, this is not one of my originals. But Grant is wearing one of my originals tonight.
So I was actually thinking to print a shirt that says "I'm not from Russia" and in the back to put "I'm not from Brazil" too.
Anything you want done, anything you want on a t-shirt, I can get done.
What part of Russia are you from? Like, sure, whatever.
Yeah, no, that's I do t-shirts. So in my
you have my credits. You can do that.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone.
Bye, Eric. Thank you. Sarah, we have 2 members who they stopped coming to meetings because they had a baby, but she is from, I'm trying to think what country. It's an Eastern European country, but same thing. Immigrated here. She and all her friends, the same thing. Like they have a very hard time identifying with like the left and what's going on, and all their American friends are very, very liberal, and they started coming to our meetings, and it was really nice to get their perspective being immigrants from Eastern Europe, where they faced things that nobody here in America has any idea of what it's like. We think we do, but we really have no idea.
I think this is the best country to live. I mean, I just don't understand what the heck is wrong with everyone. I mean, over here you need to learn a little bit of skills, like a very little skills, you know what I mean? And it's really, really easy to catch that, catch that circle. I mean, you don't, and not everybody dreams to be a billionaire, but you can have a decent life, It's just really, really insane. I don't understand this my coworkers. I mean, I go to school and I work in a restaurant. I don't understand what's wrong with them. Maybe something wrong with me. I don't know. It could be, but
no, I'm not.
But it's just the very like the rich people have to pay for everything. And look at me. I just got fired and I was waiting for an employment agency for 8 weeks to give me my money. Like, no, thank you. I don't want to depend on government on anything. Literally.
Yeah. No, definitely. But following that, I'm on Central Time, so it's almost midnight where I'm at. And I have a long day tomorrow. I'm flying back to LA on Thursday, so I'm very excited to be coming home. Just in time for them to shut everything down for 4th of July, though. Very exciting. I could have stayed here and seen fireworks, but I am going to get ready to end the meeting. I appreciate the 5 of you staying on this late. But I will send a recap email tomorrow with Leo's info, with Grant, Vernon, and Rachel's contact info if anybody wants to get involved with our committees. For Sarah and Michael, if you guys want to join us and become a member, I can chat with you about that, or Vernon can chat with you about that, or Spencer can. So yeah, thanks again for being on tonight. Does anybody have anything else they want to add before I end the meeting?
Thank you so much. This is like a fresh of the air. Like literally, I was so excited to talk about this.
Of course. Well, we're super excited to have new people, and it's just nice to see old faces coming back. Michael, I'm glad you got to join us tonight. And yeah, all right, guys. Thanks so much.
Good night. Thank you, Ariana. Sorry for interruption. Have a good night.
No, you're totally fine. Don't worry about it. Never apologize. You're good.
I'm gonna take off too, everyone. I have to do homework.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh yeah, the mic wasn't on. Yeah, so that was a recap and an overview of what we have for Leo Terrell. Okay, my mic should be not muted anymore. Test, test, test. Test, test. Yeah, it shouldn't be muted anymore. Yeah, so that was basically it. 13-year-old Moist, if you would have came out earlier and subscribed and whatever, your mic is muted though. Ah. Hello, hello. I'm not sure. You guys should be able to hear me. Yeah. So that's basically ending it for tonight. Had over 2 hours and lots of comments and stuff. You're a young Republican. On dashboard. Turn off VSync. I test. You guys should be able to hear me now. Go into Twitch settings, turn off VSync. Okay. Twitch has settings. Let me see. You guys should be able to hear me now, but let me verify that on Facebook. Twitch has settings. Okay, you guys can hear me. Okay. Yeah, guys, the Republican Party in Los Angeles, we are working. We're trying to do stuff. We're trying to be more active. And if you want to join and participate in conversations like this, join us. Turn off MBP. Okay, I'm gonna go to settings. Turn off VSync. I don't. Let me see where that is. VSync. Okay, go to settings. There's a lot of settings here on Twitch. I don't even know what the problem is I'm trying to solve. Yeah. Check out the YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel if you want to see all kinds of stuff that we do on here. And I think it's halfway saved on Twitch too. Subscribe, people. Please subscribe. That'd be nice. We have all kinds of different different topics and stuff for you guys. I'm just trying to see a link here. So here's a link to that on Facebook. But yeah, watch the video, guys. Watch back before. And 13-year-old Moist, if you are in Los Angeles or in the surrounding neighborhood, send me a PM and I'll connect with you to you know to join on and to talk and to things like that. But yeah, Leo Terrell was our speaker. He was a great one. We really got to ask some pretty cool questions. And then I'll try to see him if I could get him on this chat to talk with us and with you guys directly. Normally I have things, popped out or stuff so you guys could see and to talk and to do all that. But this was more of a conversation between all of us here. So that's kind of like how that went. Sorry about that. MBD, male pattern baldness in Twitch settings, free sync and anti-aliasing. Okay, man, I don't know what you're saying. I am a little confused. It says free sync and anti-aliasing. I don't know where that is in the Twitch settings. I don't know what the problem you're trying to solve is. I have no idea. But yeah, guys, we're if there's any more questions that you guys have, if you want to chat, let me know now. So I could get that done or whatever. But if not, thank you guys for watching. We're gonna be on every. We should have another episode for you guys tomorrow. This was an extended session with Leo Terrell, and just to see all of the stuff that he was talking about. So besides that, have a great day, have a great night, and catch us tomorrow. Subscribe.